Well, hello there, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about how game design schools can be improved through the application of Dungeons and Dragons as an educational tool. Let me just start by saying I went to game design school, I graduated from one, and then also later I taught at a couple of them for like 3 years. I'm not going to name which ones because I don't want to call into question any particular schools, but I do want to make it clear that I have quite a lot of experience in this area. And as far as Dungeons and Dragons goes, well, you know. Now, the key thing that I think Dungeons & Dragons has to offer a game design school is the ability to teach foundational game design principles in a really quick, efficient, and more effective method. The way they do that is by creating these foundations that are based on game design theory, but they're based on good theory and not bad theory. And you've probably seen a lot of bad theory out there, whether you realize it or not, because bad theory tends to focus on things like mere categorization and labeling. On the other hand, good theory focuses on things like frameworks that are usable and actionable. Here's what you should think about. Here's the questions you should be asking. Be aware of tacit questions, and when you answer a question, which you are always answering a question whenever you make any statement, be aware of what question that statement might be answering, and then ask yourself, is that the right question to be asking? Frameworks that allow you to go through that process are much more effective, and that's where game design theory, when properly applied, really excels. One really big reason that D&D is so good at doing this is because whenever you design an initial game vision, whenever you put together the initial concept for your game, it's going to be terrible. It probably doesn't imply much action on your part as a designer. It probably doesn't really suggest where the game is going to go or how the gameplay might be shaped by that vision. But that's okay. Just like with the first draft of anything, your first version is going to be terrible, and you have to iterate, and you have to figure out where you can improve it and then slowly tweak it. And D&D is really great at that because what it does is it takes the time between iterations down to almost nothing. Think about it this way. Let's say you're building a video game and your initial vision is so-and-so game is a third-person horror game where you take the role of a child looking for his lost parents. Well, there's a little bit of the plot in there, I suppose, but it really doesn't imply any gameplay at all. Look for lost parents isn't a mechanic, it's not a system. It doesn't really suggest how the player will interact with the game at all. So what do? Well, you know it's a third-person game, so you need a camera, a character controller. You need that character controller to do certain things. You don't know what the player is going to be able to do with the character yet, but you definitely need a character, so time to get to work. Then, 4 days later, when you finally solved most of the bugs and looked up countless Unreal tutorials on how to make a character controller, you begin to realize that your vision doesn't really account for gameplay or player decisions in any way. By contrast, imagine that you want to create a magic item in Dungeons & Dragons, and you decide that you want your magic item to allow for options in combat other than attacking. Well, the most obvious next step is to simply write the spell, right? So, you get to work. What does the spell do? Well, I guess we need to figure out how the player actually does those things. If we want the player to do something other than attacking in combat and solve the combat problem with something other than merely dishing out damage, what are the player's alternatives? And now we begin to consider the alternatives and we realize, our vision could be a little bit clearer. And that was over the course of like 30 seconds. When you compare a 4-day iteration time to a 30-second iteration time, clearly we're talking about more than mere efficiency. Also, and this applies to really any modding at all, but working within an existing system provides constraints externally of the designs that you're trying to create, which A, helps you reduce the amount of work that you have to do to create a good vision because the gameplay vision is already decided and you only have to create a vision for a specific component, and B, design is creative problem solving, and constraints are how you make creative problem solving happen. Because without constraints, you're just coming up with things. But within constraints, creative problem solving becomes how to achieve a particular outcome despite a particular set of obstacles. You see, I think game design schools fall into the trap of an over-reliance on tech. But let me make one thing very clear. Tech is good. You need tech in certain instances. If you want to be a game designer for video games, tech is absolutely a crucial skill for you to develop, and you cannot overlook it. But the reason I think it's a trap in the context of a design school is that it's very concrete, and it's very easy to look at tech and start solving tech problems and feel like you're making progress because you're establishing problems and then solving problems, and if you're finding problems and solving problems, clearly you must be working toward a good goal. And it's true, a better built product is a good goal to have. But the important thing here is to distinguish tech from design. tech enables design in the context of a game design school, but tech and design are different things, and that's really the crux of it. By distinguishing between these, you can decide whether you're making design decisions or tech decisions. You can realize whether you're solving design problems or tech problems. And in doing so, you can establish that the tech solutions are working you toward a portfolio piece for video games, but they are not making you a better designer. But in order to be a better designer, you need to be working on design. And in order to work on design, you need to get tech out of the way. Sometimes. Not always. Sometimes. And Dungeons and Dragons is an excellent tool for that, because you design a rule, and then you write the rule, and then you test the rule, and then in real time you can scratch the rule out, write a new one, and test the new rule. The iteration is less than 5 minutes, rather than bug fix, bug test, bug fix, bug test. How do I build this level in Unreal? Google search for 20 minutes until you finally find a video, but it's not quite what you're looking for. By contrast, Dungeons and Dragons creates a very strong, very direct, very clear relationship between the decisions you make as a designer, how those manifest in the rules, and how the rules manifest in gameplay, and how the gameplay manifests in player decisions. By creating that through line, you have a very clear process to figure out where your decision making as a designer broke down, where you made a decision that didn't lead to a result you were expecting, why that disconnect might have occurred, and how you can solve it in the future. And that all happens much more quickly, but not only more quickly. With tech, sometimes it doesn't happen at all because you're distracted by all of these other things that you have to deal with, and you do have to deal with them. If you want to be decent at tech, you have to know how to find bugs, you have to know how to solve bugs, you have to know how to build better technical content. But it's not design. And you're not learning design while you do it. So at the very beginning, I said it's an over-reliance on tech that you find in game schools. It's not a problem that they teach tech. It's not a problem that they help you build digital portfolios. These are all good things, but they rely on it too much. And by offering classes that employ Dungeons and Dragons as the method for exploring the game design foundations that you need to be learning, you remove a lot of the extraneous elements that would otherwise get in the way and create pure design classes for prospective game designers. And I mean, that just makes sense. That's it for me today. I've got a couple more D&D videos in the pipeline. Class Design Part 2 is coming within a couple of weeks, don't worry. But you can always look forward to more design-related content every week. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'm stupid, but seriously, it helps a lot. It actually does help a lot. It actually does. Okay, bye.